So you want to grow some big legs but don't know how? This is what I do on my leg day in order to try and achieve that goal. Standing calf raises is what I start off with, reason being I want to prioritize calf growth the most, and so I'm going to start my day with that so I'm not fatigued in the later parts of my workout and can't put my full effort into calf raises. Now, I usually do standing compared to seated as it's going to bias the gastroc a little bit more as the kneeling does more soleus, but you're also getting some soleus development with standing, and so I just prefer to do it for overall calf growth. With this one, you really want to focus on going all the way down at the bottom. You can't see my foot angle here, but I'm practically touching my heels to the ground and then going upwards. If you get a couple half reps down at the end of it, that's perfectly fine. You can get a lot of growth, especially in calves, in just the bottom portion of the movement compared to the top. Here I'm doing a dumbbell RDL slash SLDL, and I could do a barbell version of this. However, I just prefer the dumbbells because the Smiths that I have at my gym that I go to, for one, they have some bumpers on the bottom, so I couldn't go as far down as I wanted to, other than maybe one, so I don't have to wait for that one singular machine to open, or that one rack to open. Now, with this movement, I am using wrist straps as I don't want my forearms to be the limiting factor, and I'm also trying to make sure I'm bracing my core and pushing my hips back in order to bias my glutes and hamstrings. Here we're moving into a seated leg press movement. I'm keeping my heels all the way down on the pad as far as I can, and I also set the seat so it's as close to my feet as possible. I want to get as much knee angle as I can down at the bottom there, as you can see. If I could do even more, I would, as I have the ankle mobility in order to do so, but this is as far as the machine lets me. And again, with all these, I'm showing one set. I'm doing 2 sets on all these. You want to go close to failure, if not to failure, on all of the movements that you do if you're trying to get hypertrophy, the best or the most growth that you can get from it. And you don't need shoes like I do that are more of like a squatting shoe. You could even just go barefoot if you wanted to, or obviously with socks on if you're in a commercial gym, but it's usually better to do that compared to something like a running shoe whenever you're doing a squat movement. Now here, you see that I'm leaning forward on this seated leg curl. Reason being, the hamstring crosses the knee and hip joint, and so the more you lean forward with your upper body, you can fully lengthen your hamstring when you're extending your legs out, and you're going to get a longer stretch at that eccentric portion at the very end compared to a contracted position. And so you can lean back if you want to, however I want to stretch my hamstrings as much as possible during this movement, so I'm doing so. Another tip with this is try and keep your toes pointed or plantar flexed, and then if you want to get a couple, quote-unquote cheat reps towards the end, you can dorsiflex or point your toes towards your head, as that's going to help your lower leg, like your calf muscles, be able to pull into the movement a little bit. Now, I would say point your toes for the most part in that movement. However, again, if you're trying to get a couple cheat reps at the end, that's perfectly fine. Here, the final leg movement that I have is the leg extension. And I definitely could move the weight up on this. I did a couple extra reps compared to what I would usually do in the rep range that I'm aiming for. So that's a note for me for next time when I do this movement, that I definitely need to up the weight a couple pounds. And with this one, I set the seat back as far as I can because I want to keep my hips as open as possible instead of leaning forward like I was in the hamstring movement. Reason being, I want to target a little bit more of that upper quad rec fem muscle, and that is going to be helpful with a more open hip position. And then last thing here, I'm going to throw in a core exercise. The machine I usually do wasn't open, so I improvised and did this. And I usually do core at the end of every single one of my workouts. It's not always, but I try to. If something's not open, I'm not going to sweat it too much, but my form isn't the greatest on these, but I am pretty proud of it because the core has been an area for me that has been super weak throughout all of my training. And so I've really tried to prioritize it in my training to get better at it, and I feel like I'm doing so.